Choosing a point of view or POV for your story may seem like a small choice, but it actually has quite major ramifications for the structure of your story and the reader's experience of it. Many authors are stumped when it comes to choosing between first person or close third person or omniscient narration, and it can be hard to determine which one will suit your story best. But mastering POV is critical if you are serious about improving your abilities as a storyteller. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 3 main POVs that most stories, particularly novels, are written in, and talk through 4 key factors for you to consider when you are choosing your POV for your story. If you're anywhere along the book writing or publishing journey, I recommend subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. In addition to giving these writing tips, I also talk about the publishing industry as that is my professional background. Before we chat more about POV, if you could just take 1 second and hit that thumbs up button, it really works wonders with the YouTube algorithm and helps out my channel so much. I really appreciate it. Let's start by breaking down the 3 main POV options when you're looking at a work of fiction. The first is first person, which means that the narrative is written in the main character or narrator's direct voice using I statements. This could be a single first person POV, or you could have multiple first person POVs. The second is close third person or limited third person. Even though you're not writing in the character's specific voice in this case, you are still writing from their perspective, meaning the narrative is still contained to what that character knows. And like first person, you could have a single close third person POV or multiple POVs. The final main POV is omniscient narration. This is where the narrator has an all-knowing, kind of bird's eye perspective on the story. But one word of caution with omniscient narration, it can be difficult to execute well. And it's often confused with head hopping. Writers can think that they are writing in omniscient narration when they are actually head hopping, which is typically something you want to avoid in your story. I have another video that breaks down the differences between omniscient narration and head hopping, so definitely check that out if you're confused on this point. Now, I'm not going to talk about second person POV in terms of works of fiction, even though it can be used, just because it's the least common. While there are certainly examples of second person working well, especially for longer form fiction, it tends to be a challenge, especially for authors who are newer in their career. Now, keep in mind that as you are developing your career, you're not limited to writing just in first person or just in third person. Plenty of authors mix and match POVs according to whatever story they're telling and what suits it best. There are certainly some novels that incorporate storylines written in first person as well as storylines written in third person. But if you want to go this route, I recommend making sure that the different POVs are justified, because otherwise it can be disorienting to hop between third person and first person within a singular text. Now that we know the 3 main types of POVs you can choose for your story, let's talk about the 4 factors to consider to decide between them. The first factor that will help you determine which POV is best for your story is narrative intimacy. Consider how close you want the reader to be to your narrator or POV character. First-person POV tends to be the most intimate because we are experiencing the story directly through that protagonist's eyes, and we have direct access to their stream of thoughts and reactions to all the events of the story. First person immediately creates a connection between the narrator and the reader. I have another video that goes into first person pros and cons, so if you're considering first person, definitely check that out. Now, close third person puts a little bit more distance between the reader and the POV character. No longer are you inhabiting their exact voice, but we are still seeing the events of the story through that character's perspective. We should still have deep access to their interiority, though we may not be hearing their direct stream of consciousness in the same way. And then omniscient narration creates the most distance between the reader and the characters, because we are seeing everything through the narrator's eyes. They are mediating the story for us. This is what I mean when I talk about POV affecting the reader's experience of the story. Consider how close you want us to be to those characters. If you've been enjoying my videos, I have great news. There's so much more content. Where that came from, I've been building out my website, chapter-break.com, with exclusive interviews with publishing industry insiders and deep dive content from my experience as a developmental book editor. By signing up to Chapter Break, you'll receive my weekly emails with all of this amazing writing and publishing content, and you'll get a free resource called my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet. I designed this quiz to help authors who are feeling stuck in their current draft and don't know where to take it from here. So if that sounds like you, definitely check it out. The links for my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet and to check out my newsletter website are in the description. The next factor to consider when choosing POV is voice. As I mentioned, in first person, you are adopting your main character's voice and writing in it as if you are them. This allows you to convey your character's unique personality and worldview through their language choices, and you can play with style quite a bit here. This can create a really immersive and engaging experience where, again, we feel so connected to the main character. But first person can also backfire if readers don't connect with your narrator's voice for whatever reason, or if they find it annoying. Also, as an author, depending on how your narrator's voice pans out, it could be a challenge for you to consistently write in their voice. It might be exhausting or stifling if it doesn't come naturally to you to write in that voice. In fact, I just worked with an author who was writing a first-person novel and then wanted to incorporate a second first-person narrator, showing another character's point of view. But they really struggled to adopt the second narrator's voice. So they ended up changing the entire novel to close third person. So now they have a storyline following the original character in close third person, and they added this second character in close third person, which allowed them to incorporate their perspective, but didn't require them to adopt that character's voice. That brings me to close third person. Because you have that little bit of distance between the reader and the POV character, you can use a more neutral tone. Then in omniscient narration, I'd argue that voice becomes quite important again. Because for a strong, compelling omniscient narration, we need a sense of the narrator's voice and influence over the story. The next factor to consider when choosing POV is information delivery. The POV that you choose has a direct impact on how you create suspense and tension in your story, because it affects what information the POV character or characters, and therefore the reader, has access to at any given moment. In first person or close third person, our knowledge of events is limited to the POV character's knowledge. That means that when they're surprised by information, we're also surprised. Within close third person or first person, you can play with having multiple characters' points of view included, where one character is aware of something that another character isn't yet, and that creates tension and suspense. In omniscient narration, you have full reign over the delivery of information, because the narrator is all-knowing, and they not only have access to what's in every character's head, but also information the characters themselves don't even know. So you have a lot of freedom to deliver information in various ways. The final factor to consider when choosing POV is the genre. Some genres naturally lend themselves to one POV or another. For instance, memoir is expected to be written in first person, and a lot of YA novels are written in first person, though not all of them. By contrast, epic fantasy or sci-fi novels are often written in third person, though again, not all of them. The majority of fiction genres, though, really can be written in any POV that you choose. That goes for women's fiction, historical fiction, romance, etc. It's all about making sure that your POV matches what you are trying to achieve in your story. I hope this video helped you determine which POV might be best for your story and help you understand why POV is so important. Now let me know in the comments which POV your novel is written in and why you chose that POV. Before you head out, if you're looking for some more POV tips, I have another video that goes into common close third person mistakes, so if that's your POV, definitely check it out. Don't forget to grab your free story self-assessment worksheet and check out my newsletter in the links below. While you're down there, give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to join our amazing community. Thank you so much for watching and happy writing.